Right, good evening everyone. Welcome once again to our Loughgall FC Youth Development Special Zoom session. We've entitled these Elite Player Development, and really what we've done for the last number of weeks is bring along different speakers, different guests, just to come along and share their own personal stories in football, and also share some tips for those who are attending. So in recent weeks, we've had players right down from 10, 11-year-old right up through to the development squad, and even some first team players on. And we've had a really brilliant group of topics to discuss, as well as people that we've had on. So Gary, this has really been an excellent thing we've managed to put on, and it's been a real success for the club and for the players.
Yeah, brilliant, DJ. And each week it just gets stronger, and everything that we're trying to achieve and doing it just gets even more magnitude is the fact that the first team players even on tonight, because that's what we've set out to achieve, to make it a much closer club, to give us that connection. And also in the time that we're in, we want the first team players to be as approachable as anybody at the club. Should a kid really need a conversation or need a chat, then first team players are as approachable just as a coaches. So thanks to them again for coming on, and thanks to everybody who's been here so far, and it's been brilliant. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And you make a really good point, just about the whole sort of unity of the club, right from the youth right up to the senior. I know it's something that Dean's very passionate about, is making it one club. And right from the first session we've done, there's been members of the committee have attended the webinars. The chairman, Sam Nicholson, wrapped up the first session. The vice chairman, James Johnson's on tonight. We'll wrap up this session. So support right throughout the club has been brilliant. But ultimately, it's been about the players. It's about, we do live in difficult times. This whole COVID crisis, very, very difficult for families, even away from football. But for young players, particularly who are cooped up in houses, not getting the exercise, not getting the interaction with the other young people, there's a lot of mental health issues surrounding this sort of last year. And it's one thing being an adult, and adults are finding it tough, relationships, business, money, all that. But for young kids, listen, it might be years before we realise the damage and the challenge that has been to them. So this is brilliant, getting them on tonight, and it's been brilliant interaction, getting them a chance just to see people and get a chat. So Zoom session number 5, position specific. So tonight we're dealing with midfielders and attackers. So we've done the defenders and the goalkeeper last week. That, of course, is the most important part of the pitch, is the defenders and the goalkeepers, being a defender. No doubt our guest tonight will disagree with that, but we'll discuss that as we go along. Doesn't matter how many goals you score, you have to make sure you're keeping them out the far end. So I thought I might get a reaction from one or two of them, but they decided...
You must have been a defender, were you?
Oh, definitely a defender. So tonight, delighted to welcome 4 guests, and also then Andy Smith, first team coach, to give his input sort of overarching. So we've got Scott McCullough, Marcus Dallas, Andy Hoey, Nathaniel Ferris, all have taken time to come here tonight. So guys, thanks very much for making the effort. Really appreciate that. Now, really interesting, and I didn't know this until Gary pointed it out, all 4 of the guests tonight have actually represented their country. So for all you young players on, and I know particularly the National League teams, and you're 13, 14, 15-year-old, and you've got an aspiration, to play first team football at Loughgall, you've got an aspiration to maybe go on and play for Northern Ireland or to get across the water. Well, all the guests tonight have actually represented their country at some level. So that's a tremendous achievement, and it does just show you the quality of player that we have in the first team at Loughgall. And these are guys that you can emulate, guys that you should be looking to watch when they're playing, when we go to lockdown, and learn from them. And tonight, obviously, we're going to be hearing from them. So straight away, first one is Marcus Dallas. I've known Marcus probably, I'm guessing, 7, 8 years now, from when he was at Coke and I was managing the Anna, and we had a couple of interesting battles. I remember one really interesting one. I suppose Dean would have been playing that game with Dara Payton and Big Mob. It was a 1-each draw up at Coke at the start of the year. I'll just call it handbags. Not sure if it was quite fisticuffs at the end, but it was a good battle, Marcus, if you remember that one. But in terms of career, Marcus started off at Coke.
I remember it well. I see how he went on to it.
Yep, you did indeed. You managed to get promoted that year. So Marcus has won 2 championship medals. Bob Ratcliffe, he then signed for Loughgall, another Bob Ratcliffe, Mid-Ulster Cup, selected for the Northern Ireland Borders Cup. And then, I don't know where this came out of, but somewhere along the CV, someone said Marcus has won a couple of 5-a-sides. I mean, there's something wrong, Marcus, if you have to put in 5-a-side cups as part of your CV, mate.
Let's put it in just for a bit of crack.
I dead on.
Very good. So yeah, Marcus, just really, Marcus, take like 30-40 seconds just to give your background in football, when you first team you ever played for, up through to where you are now.
My first senior team was Coke United, my local club. Started there. After, I was at the World Cup, and then I went to Glenavon, and then me wanted to earn money as quick as I can, so working, and it was Shepard. It didn't really work out. It was actually Glenavon used to it, and straight till I piled on a ball of weight, and in 2 years time, and then I started knocking down, saying for Coke. And didn't do much for Coke at the time, and then I really got good and fit, played with Coke, won the league with Coke, a really good time with Coke, actually. It was best, and then we went up in the Championship 1, stayed there for a year, and then the second year we were relegated. And then everybody was breaking up, but it was actually a decent wee say. But it was time, it was the boys getting past it, so we all broke up. So then I signed for Loughgall. That's about 7 years ago. This will be my 7th season. So,
right, very good, very good. Okay, that's grand. And we'll get into a little bit about, obviously, the position you play and some of your comments on that just in a minute. So thank you for that. Okay, next one is Nathaniel Ferris. I've known Nathaniel since he was in P1. Believe it or not, because he was in school with my son for most of primary school. So he played for Dungannon, then Loughgall, first Irish League goal when he was 17, represented Northern Ireland in the Centenary Shield, scoring against England, the Republic of Ireland, scored his first ever schoolboys hat-trick for Northern Ireland against Jersey. What sort of team of Jersey, though, I have to say? Maybe just, excuse scoring a hat-trick, but Jersey, right, okay. And scored a winner against the Mid-Ulster Cup final. Now that to be fair deserves credit. Loughgall, I was a fantastic winner that night. Obviously brilliant for the club. So you're very welcome, Nathaniel, tonight. You want to just give a quick 30-40 seconds on your background, your football journey, and just give us an update.
Yeah, I've sort of jumped around a lot of clubs just as I've sort of come up. I would have started sort of playing for Loughgall, and then sort of moved to Portadown after playing a couple of first team games and sort of bouncing in around the reserves for Loughgall. Broke into Portadown's first team, then sort of went out on loan to Anna, and then from Anna then went to Dungannon, and then from Dungannon then ended up at Loughgall. Been at Loughgall now for maybe 2.5, 3 years. Not 100% sure, but it's taken a while to sort of find my feet, obviously. But last season, hoping to kick on from continue scoring a consistent amount of goals every week. So sort of where I'm now, and then currently out on loan at Dungannon just to get a bit of football and like everyone else. So that's sort of where I am at the minute.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, here, if you had a signing on fee for every club you signed for there, you must be a rich man.
You said I didn't.
I said if. I didn't say you didn't. Yeah, no, but well done. That was good stuff there. Now, that's all right. I couldn't resist this, Nathaniel. You'll forgive me. There's a picture of Nathaniel in about P7 at Marilyn Village Primary School. So that's my boy there in the of course the Chelsea outfit. But I put this up for a very quick story. I'm sure Nathaniel won't mind. So Nathaniel's dad, Eugene, would have took the Marilyn Village Primary School team sometimes for football. And Josh was there one day and Eugene asked me to help him out. So I was walking down the line with Eugene, and the parent said to me, "Here, that boy Nathaniel Ferris, boy, he's a good player, isn't he?" To which I couldn't resist saying, Well, if you learn to pass the ball to somebody, you'd be an even better player.
It's not much has changed since then either.
Exactly. No, but listen, you've had a brilliant career so far. You're still young. You've developed fantastically. And no doubt you're going to go on and have a real successful Irish League career. So Gary, I'll hand over to you, Gary, to introduce Andy and Scott. Are you there, Gary? Gary got himself on
Gary. We're sorted. Yeah, that's me. So anybody who has a wee question just before we start, we'll just fire it into the chat box going forward. I'll put a wee message in there just to let you all know in case you haven't seen it. So next guest, Andy Hoey. So Andy, again, we'll go along the lines of Jimmy Ray last week. A really good career, quality player, and a lot of surprises that people wouldn't expect. So Andy played at Glenavon, Armagh City, and then same for Loughgall. He's represented Northern Ireland at under 16, under 17, under 18. Made his Irish League debut at 17 years of age and scored at the Oval against Glentoran, which is quite a debut. Again, and going towards the kids that we have, 2 teams going to a Super Cup this year. Andy has no short term lived at the Super Cup of 3 years at County Armagh. And then, of course, he couldn't wait to get this one in. He scored live on Sky for Northern Ireland against Wales. So, Andy, do you want to jump on and just give us a wee bit on that and about the goal? Did you have a mad celebration for Sky, or what was the crack?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to do. I just waved my hands about like an idiot. But guys basically explained all there. I haven't been haven't played for many clubs. I've only played for the 3. I came up through the youth ranks at Armagh City just till I was 13, 14, and then I signed for Glenavon, and I played there right up until I was 18. And then I was just sitting on the bench regularly for Glenavon as I couldn't really break through to the starting 11. So I thought I decided to go out to another club in the lower leagues. So Armagh City I went to for a year or 2, which went well, and then Loughgall signed me, and I've been there ever since the past 4/5 years, and I've loved it. So I have, and whenever I played for Glenavon, I was representing Northern Ireland as well. So we are a really good side in the National League, and I got the opportunity to play on Sky Sports in the Victory Shield for Northern Ireland under-16s against England, Scotland and Wales, and obviously it went well, and I scored v Wales, as Gary said there, and it was just a great moment for me and my family.
Brilliant, mate. Good achievement. Superb. Well done. So the last guest, Scotty McCullough. Me and Scott go back a long time. Good mate. So it's good to get on to this one, and more so because I'm going to tell you as a quick sort of intro in terms of there's more to this story than meets the eye. We've spoke about in the last couple of weeks about mental health and about mentality of footballers and how you bounce back and how you face adversity. Now, this one, I know we'll try and keep it as short as we can, but this is a big story in terms of quite a few things have happened. But just introducing Scotty to the good thing. So obviously, another good thing about it is Scott played for Loughgall at a young age at under 14s. He actually put in the message that he sent me that he moved because Portdown were rubbish. So
not true.
I have to get that in there. But again, Scott, for the teams going to the Super Cup, Scott represented County Armagh for 4 years in a row. Not the fact that his dad's a chairman, but
he wasn't then.
he must have a bit of quality.
He wasn't then.
But no, listen, and tell you the truth, I think it was 2 years, Scotty, you captained it.
Yeah,
so 2 years captain of the County Armagh, and again represented Northern Ireland at 15s, 16s and 18s. Scotty then went on, moved to Dungannon, signed for Dungannon and made his first team debut at 17. Unfortunately, 2 years later, Scotty was diagnosed with leukemia. So his football took a wee bit of a back step then, as you would imagine. But anyway, I'll let Scott talk about that. But he got back anyway and superbly back to football 2 years later in 2013. Signed for Hanover. And from there, it just went on and on. Every year, he progressed massively. But what's not in there, and I'll let Scott just touch on it quickly, is that in that time at Hanover, he had a really bad knee injury, and then I think it was actually at Loughgall. Scotty, you had to get the operation, was it?
No, I had two different knees.
But so then he signed for Loughgall in 2017. So yeah, it's been unbelievable. So Scotty, just if you want to give a wee recap of that, and then
Yeah, so well, to start off, I was a poor down right up the 14s, and to tell you the truth, our poor down team was probably better than Loughgall at the time, but it was more, I'd say it was more my dad was sort of trying to get us to go to Loughgall because they were in a better league at the time, better league, better teams. So he obviously thought it was better for us to go there. So went to Loughgall, done well for a couple of years into the Milk Cup, played 4 years, which was at that age, it's like it's the best week's football of your life. Like you just feel like a pro for a whole week. So Milk Cup was class experience. Done well there and stayed with Loughgall till about 16s, was doing well with Loughgall and got picked for Victory Shields. Was in under 15s, under 16s, then went to Victory Shield, some class games there, like played Liverpool, played City, played Newcastle, played Middlesbrough, all over their academies, like was class to see. And then Dougie's dad was actually the manager of Dungannon 16s at the time. So he approached me to go to Dungannon and went there, played the 16s, 18s, reserves, and was breaking through to the first team. And then made my debut when I was 17. It was really, well, to be honest, it was a nothing match like Dungannon, where they had the playoff game against, I can't remember who it was, to stay in the league anyway. And they played a load of young fellas, so a few of us got pulled into fringe team players. So I was doing well enough, I suppose, at that age, 16. The year after, Dixie thought it was best to probably go out and try to get some first team football. Went to Loughgall on loan. And then that's whenever I was at Loughgall, April 2011, got some bad news that I had leukemia, which is like a type of blood cancer. So it was a bit of a shock to the system, but done all the treatments, whatever else, and it all went well as possible. Couldn't complain really. Came back from it and signed for Hanover, my local club. They were willing to take me and let me get back to fitness, back playing football. So went to Hanover, had a couple of really good years. Was getting fit, was nearly as fit as I'd been, to tell you the truth. And then the summer, I think it was about 4 league games left for Hanover. We're on the way to win the league, and I dislocated my patella in my left knee. So that put me out for 6 months, maybe a wee bit more, 9 months. And then I came back from it, got proper fit again, was doing pretty good, and Dino contacted me, signed for Loughgall. Went to Loughgall, had my first pre-season game, and cracked me all knee. So that was me out again. I think I was actually about 18 months. That was my snookered for. So we didn't really know what was wrong with that time. We couldn't get to the end of it. And then eventually I went and got a scan. And the problem with my knee was the chemotherapy that I was receiving was killing bones, or the bone in my knee was going dead. So I had to go and get it operated on. And whenever the surgeon was in operating on it, he found out that I tore my meniscus as well. So at that stage, the surgeon told me the possibility I'd probably never play football again. So a wee bit of a whirlwind there. And got the operation done, came back. Everything seemed to go pretty well. And then I just got myself back to fitness. Got a full pre-season done last year, and then was doing well in the first team and now the first team. And I'm probably fitter than I've ever been at the minute. So now COVID's wrecked everything. It's been a bit of a whirlwind.
That's brilliant, Scotty. And just quickly, just for people, because sort of the topic that we've been on and what we've been speaking about has been mentality, and it's been sort of in times of adversity that COVID has brought for young players alone. You know, leukemia probably isn't one of the things that we would have been talking about, because it's not something you expect a player to sort of bounce back from and play at a championship level. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. But just in terms of your mentality, when you got the news and all, obviously it was, you know, I'm sure you were devastated, but you obviously had to have some sort of unbelievable mentality to say to yourself, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to get back and play football again.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'll never forget the time they told me. Like, they brought me in the room and I was obviously devastated, but see, from that, say maybe for half an hour, you know, shed a wee tear, whatever else you had to do. But see, after that, I never really looked back. The consultant came in, spoke to me, just told me the path that he seen that we were going to go and get through it, and I just trusted him and what he said, and that was it pretty much. And I never really got too annoyed about it, like, if that makes sense. I just never asked too many questions. Whatever happened, and thankfully I was lucky enough with it. Like, so it was. Yeah.
I know this is maybe a silly question, because obviously life is more important, but was football something that sort of got you through? Did you want to play football again? Was it?
You always wanted to at the start. You're thinking, obviously it's probably not top of your list, like, but as the months go on and you start to feel a wee bit better and you start to get through the worst of it, then that's when you start thinking about getting back to football. And that's whenever I was actually lucky enough, obviously, with the guys at Hanover. Like, I was friendly with them all and knew most of them, and that's when they gave me a chance to go and get training with them again and to see where I was at. And obviously I've just got the head down and worked hard and got fitter from them. Yeah, I think you're a really good example, Scott, to, you know, younger players, the club particularly. You know, given the journey you've been on, and I know how hard you work at getting back. You came and played for the 20s one day at Larne, you know, away to Larne on a Saturday morning. It was an early kickoff because their first team were at home. And listen, I've been around clubs, and, you know, thankfully it's not like this at Loughgall, but other clubs, first team players would make an excuse not to bother turning up. It was, I think it was like a 10:30 kickoff maybe at Larne, and you were there early, ready to go, as professional as you would be for the first team. And I remember Darren and me were commenting out there. I mean, just brilliant mentality, Scott, fantastic mentality, and a great example to the other players, you know. And you're come back from injury, but you knocked your pan on that day, you know. So that's a brilliant story. But right, we need to get moving on here. So Andrew Smith has joined us. Andy's joined us, obviously first team coach. I didn't put a big profile up for you, Andy. I know you're a very sort of humble guy and don't want all the Scottish career put in lights and stuff, but you want to just give a quick introduction to obviously yourself, and then I'll let you kind of lead into the importance of midfielders in football.
Yeah, no, my probably stuff wouldn't fit in one page anyway, so as myself, like I say, played Irish League football, know what I had to do, and played a bit over in Scotland, and came back then and kind of joined Loughgall again, and we had quite a successful period there at Loughgall under Niall. After that, then moved on to a few other clubs there in the Premier League, and then again came back to Loughgall. So no, listen, it's been it's great, as I say, working with the gaffer and Nicky now, looking after. As I say, we say the cream of the crop here at Loughgall. Listen, exciting, and the facilities we have is, for me, probably the best outside of Linfield in the country. So, I mean, with what we have and what we're trying to do, and with the successful youth setup that you guys are running, it's going to bear well for the future for Loughgall Football Club. And I think that's what gets the gaffer, Nicky, and myself, and the rest of the coaching staff. That's what keeps us motivated during this kind of strange time. But we know we can see that what we have from the under 20s, under 18s, and below. So, no, listen, it's a very, very exciting time for Loughgall, and we're very, very chuffed and over the moon to be a part of that.
All right, Andy. George, can you use your microphone now, please?
I might get it from here. Here's the George.
That's it done now.
That's all right.
Incarnation Street's on.
I can't even believe, Andy, you didn't even mention who it was went chasing you to sign for Loughgall when you came back from Scotland. You never even mentioned it. Like, That's okay. That's all right. That's fair enough.
Sorry, Davey. Sorry, Davey.
I went and got you about the sign. You think you took appendix, did you, that week? Did you have appendix problem or something, or you end up in hospital?
I did. It was, yeah. It was a strange one because. What was that, Marcus?
You ate too much.
No, it was actually strange. It was actually strange when he came back from Scotland, and I think I was on the lookout for a club. I think Dave, you had contacted me, and then I came and trained, I think, once or twice with Jimmy Gardner, and basically what happened was then my appendix bust in the hospital, and I never really kind of done anything or thought about anything, but then all of a sudden, after 7 or 8 weeks, I came back, and I remember turning up to the training ground just out of the blue and going, is Jimmy about? He's like, no, who are you? I was like, oh no, I was here training, and it was Shane Radish and the rest of the guys were there, so it was Scabatici and all them lads, so it was very different. But no, listen, that was some great times.
That was a story. Right, well, Andy, I'll let you sort of go first, and then I've got a couple of questions for specific players, but obviously you played, I don't know, defence, but midfield a fair bit of your career, so what in a nutshell to kick us off? And as Gary says, lads, get your questions into the chat box. Tonight's going to be sort of more rapid fire. We're not going to spend too long on one question, because we've got about 25 minutes here, but we want to get loads of questions in, and we'll fire them around the different players and get different inputs. So we've got a slide here on midfielders. There's a slide on attackers, so we'll kind of lean on the midfielders first, and then we'll have a few questions for the attackers. So, Andy, just to kick us off, what makes a good midfielder? What are the key attributes? What do you look for in a midfielder?
I think it's hard to put your finger on, because the midfielder now has changed, and it's ever changing, ever evolving. We've got defensive midfielders. We're now playing with 3 midfielders and sit in front of a holding midfielder. It used to be where we had basically 2 centre midfielders and 2 wingers. Them days have kind of disappeared. So, midfielders, you're really looking at someone that understands the role. You're looking for someone that athletic ability now has become so prevalent in the modern day game is, really what we have to, as I say, I wouldn't be able to play in the modern day game, and that's why Dally can't play in it at the moment because the athleticism is so key. Athleticism is so key, especially for a midfielder nowadays, getting box to box. It's for me, a midfielder is having an all-round technical game and having the ability to do everything that there is to do, whether that be defensively, whether that be attacking. So again, midfielder is a key. It's the engine room of the team.
Yeah. Okay. So to throw one out to maybe Scott and Dallas initially. Quote there from Xavi. I'd love to be faster. Physically, I'm limited, but I've survived by using my head. Thought an interesting one. Obviously Barcelona turned up 7, 8, 9 years ago, took the world by storm, playing a completely different style of football than was used to. The top clubs were all looking for the giants, big physical specimens. Along comes Barcelona with a bunch of very small players for elite football, and then started to win everything. So in terms of physically, Irish League particularly, very, very physical level. Championship, very, very physical. So for you two guys, in terms of what Xavi said there, physical is one thing, but having the right head, the right game mentality, how important is that have you found in your career?
You want me to go or you want to go?
Go ahead.
Physically, listen, you can have guys that's physical, but if they don't have it upstairs, they're playing the wrong game. That's my opinion. Some of the guys not our league are like rugby players, but they can't kick a ball. You know what I mean? So definitely it helps to have both. Like personally, I think it's actually a weakness of mine is I'm probably not physical enough. Probably not the best upstairs, but it's something I really need to be working on. Like, I'm not doing enough gym work. I'm not physical enough. I'm not physical enough tackling. So it's probably a bit too late in my career to really start working on it, but it's something I wish I had worked on a bit earlier, probably.
Yeah, you're saying there about having that in your head. I mean, obviously I've come across you obviously at Hanover and as at Money Slaying, obviously watched a lot of golf. I mean, you are a player that does think about the game. Your positional sense. You're looking at pictures over your shoulder, finding space. Wanting the ball to feet and things like that. I mean, that is a part of your game. I think that is very good in terms of trying to see the pictures of the game, and that is very, very important in football. Right, Marcus, do you want to just come in on that? I know you obviously, Marcus, you always enjoyed the physical side of the game, but you obviously enjoyed getting on the ball as well. So in terms of your kind of playing style, you've kind of a bit of both.
Yeah.
But is there one that's more important than the other?
No, I think you need both, obviously. I was seeing maybe the deep end when I was younger playing with Cook and against Smudger and Dean, and you soon learn the tricks of the trade, as I'd say. With the physical side of it, you learn quick. So that puts you in good stead, to be honest. The younger you get it, I think. As for your head, using your head, I think nowadays, a lot of players think they always have to play the perfect pass, in the feet and stuff sometimes, and using your head and what way the pitches are and what team you're against. There's using your head by putting it in behind them at times and turning them and things like that. Young players don't have that awareness, but as they get older, they'll learn.
You're really trying to impress Smudger there, Dala.
He bullied me, that's why.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point you make there, just in terms of younger players and knowing different styles for different types of games. It's a bugbear of mine with youth football is that young players are coached to death. That they're coached to play a passing game, and I think we do a disservice to young players sometimes because we coach them to death until they hit 17, 18, and then we put them in a senior team where results matter. The manager's job is on the line, don't get results, and you have to be able to adapt your game given the circumstances, given the pitch, given the weather, given even just the importance of the game. And I think that's something that we don't do enough with young players, making them learn and adapt their game. I think that's very, very important.
You go to Dundalk, you'll not get too much time in the ball, that's for sure. You'll not be looking the perfect pass. You'll be always playing possession game, or you'll not be playing possession game. You'll be just trying to turn them and get up the pitch. But you learn that as you go on. Yeah.
So I've got one question for Hoey, and then Gary, if you have any questions you want to bring in from the audience, and then we'll move on to the attackers. So Andy, a quote here from Iniesta, again, absolute unbelievable legend of his generation. And his quote is, "Small players learn to be intuitive, to anticipate, to protect the ball. A guy who weighs 90 kilos doesn't move around like one that weighs 60. So I'm not trying to sort of pick on you and say you're small, but you're probably not the biggest player in the Loughgall team, if that's a fair comment to make. But how have you found, because you've had to adapt your game. I mean, Championship 1's a physical league, but you have adapted and been very successful. So how have you done that?
Yeah, well, that quote sums me up perfectly, as I would be one of the smallest players on the pitch. And as Dali says there, the rugby players you come up against in our league, you have to adapt your game. So the way I would adapt my game is usually just, as you said, the lad said there, you need to be 2 steps upstairs. So you're always you're always thinking about your next move and stuff to get ahead of them and stuff. So the person I watched when I was younger actually was Cesc Fabregas. I used to watch videos of him flat out. His head was always on a swivel, trying to get a step ahead and knowing what he was going to do next. So when you come up against a big player, you can move to make you get the ball quicker and stuff, and easier to allow you more space and time on the ball. Just stuff like that there, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. There's a really good quote by Pep Guardiola. Pep was actually an incredibly slow player for the elite level of football. I mean, he had no pace at all. Like, but he talked about, his quote was, "I'm a very slow player, but I pass the ball quick, and that makes me a quick player." And that was an interesting insight into his mentality of what he had to do to adapt, to his physicality. So, Gary, have you any questions in from the attendees?
No, there's nothing in at the moment, DJ. So just, if everybody would start to try and get your questions in, lads, this is an absolutely brilliant opportunity, especially if you play in these positions. As I say, DJ and myself and the coaches at the club can coach you the basics of what it is, but these boys have got the experience and they've been there, they've done it. There's things outside the box that you'll never think that you need to know. So, just a simple question, get it in, and we get asking and we get the information that you need to know. But I suppose for me, and Smudger sort of nailed it in terms of the game's ever evolving. So, have you grew up thinking that you're a certain position, but then as the game evolves and becomes more technical, do you then feel that you've had to almost learn again, or you've had to learn quickly to adapt to the way today's football, as DJ said, is the passing game? Have you had to adapt especially the likes of Nathaniel, where maybe teams aren't, you've had to play that 9 where you're holding balls up and bringing your 10 in, because when I play with 10s and we play with wingers who are high. So, you used to being in the box and scoring goals. Everything's changing every year. And as I say, the coaching's changing. So how have you adapted, and what's been the key things to being able to adapt?
Yeah, look, I've had to massively adapt my game, because I think a lot of people would agree that I've never been the most technical player. Like, even now, my strengths will still be run and try and bully people and score goals. So obviously the main thing I've had to try and bring into my game is, first of all, first touch, which, to be honest, is when I first started, I just simply didn't have. First touch was always, second touch was always a tackle, sometimes still is. And I still can't pass a ball 5 yards. I can probably clip a ball 40 yards across the pitch, but I can't pass a ball 5 yards. And that's a lot down to focus as well. I think you take things too lightly, but that's definitely something I've had to bring into the game, the back to goal sort of side of things, keeping the ball, moving it on from there, and being a link from sort of attack and the midfield. And that's something I've had to work on very recently, and something I'm going to have to keep building on, because it's definitely one of the weaker parts of my game. I think that's one, you need to identify them things, and that comes with coaching, and it comes with obviously the players around you speaking to you, and listening's a big thing, and that's one thing I definitely had to take on board quite recently.
I suppose, Nathaniel, then I suppose it comes from kids think if they're a striker they just have to score goals, but what you're saying there is, although what you scored 40 goals last season or something like that, incredible scoring, but how many did you actually then as a player have to set up and have to link players in and have to do things differently than just score goals? It's a different part of your game.
Yeah, if the likes of Dallas chips the ball in behind someone, I'm going to run onto it. I'm going to try and finish it myself. But a lot of the time, and the quality of the players that you're playing against, depending on who you're playing against, that just doesn't happen. So you have to obviously make sure that you can link obviously the midfield up, pass it on to players, and get players further up the pitch. A lot of the time you're holding the ball so that you can create chances further up the pitch, potentially for yourself or for someone else. But as a centre forward, you can't just expect to run behind. You can't just expect for a ball to be put on a plate for you. You have to work for it, especially in harder games. Harder games, you sometimes get very few in between chances. But as a centre forward, the bottom line is you must score goals. So if you get a chance, you have to bury it. And obviously finishing is one thing that, again, believe it or not, was never a strong point in my game. Like, I still would struggle to pass a ball into a corner. So sort of developed the idea that if I can hit it hard enough into a corner, they're not going to be saved. So that's a technical side of thing that I've never really had, but I wouldn't really say it's something I can really work on either. I think you have to understand your strength at the same time. Curling a ball into a bottom corner isn't one of my strengths, but hitting the ball very hard is definitely one. So I think if you're a centre forward, you need to be taking your chances, but you need to be able to link the midfield as well, so that the chances can be created for yourself and for others as well. So that's a big part of being a centre forward as well as everything else.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Henry Murphy, if you want to unmute yourself and just ask the boys yourself, you've a wee question there.
Hi. What is the best piece of advice you could give a midfielder going into the Super Cup?
Okay, so the best bit of advice that you could give a midfielder going up to the Super Cup. So I know, Scotty, obviously you'd played at Milk Cup, and I think Andy, you had said Milk Cup as well. So maybe you're probably the best two to maybe talk about that, sort of a little bit similar, getting up and spending a week at that. So Andy, you want to go first and then over to Scott?
Yeah, well, obviously, as Scott said before, it's one of the best weeks of your life, as you're living the life of a professional footballer for a week, basically. You're eating the right foods and stuff, and you're training, you're preparing right, you're doing your recovery after matches. Whenever we were at the Milk Cup, we actually went down to the sea, as Smudger took us down and went down to the sea, and it was perfect for recovery, and you were always ready for the next match. And the advice that I'd give when you're there playing is just be confident and do what you do usually. Like it's just another game. Just do your basics well and just do what you do well, and just stuff like that. Just don't change anything. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink that you're just playing against, you're going to be coming up against better opposition or something. Just you worry about your game and just play how you usually do. That's the advice I'd give.
Brilliant.
Go ahead, Scott, and then we'll hear from Andy on that as well.
My main bit of advice for going up for that week would be to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Don't get too caught up in it being Super Cup and being a big massive tournament and worried about it. Go there with looking to enjoy it more than anything. If games don't go your way, I wouldn't get too beat up about it. Don't let it annoy you, because it's not too often you get to play in tournaments like that. So the advice I'd give is make sure you're as fit as possible for going. Make sure you're ready. Don't give yourself no excuses when you get there, but enjoyment's definitely will be top of the pile for me for going there.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Andy, you've obviously taken teams up there, so a young player, heading up.
Yeah.
Brilliant that the club's got an opportunity to take teams up there. So, what any advice you could give the young players?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's a big shop window. For me, as Scott's already alluded to, is get your body in the best shape you can. Go up there that you're 100%, you're finely tuned as athletic as you can be. And you're up there for a reason, because you've got the ability. Have confidence in your ability, but make sure your body and your preparation is correct, and the rest will take care of itself. It's as simple as that. But I'd say ultimately you have to go up there and enjoy it. Football is a sport you enjoy. If you don't enjoy your sport, you're not gonna be your best.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. We'll do this one first, Gary, and then we'll leave it open to all the questions. I see 3 or 4 questions in there, but let's just quickly move on to attackers, and then we'll let you wrap up with some of the good questions there. So moving on from midfielders to attackers, Nathaniel's already mentioned a couple of things from his perspective, but just a couple of quotes to throw out there for discussion. Alan Shearer, I think, does Alan Shearer still hold the record for the Premiership, does he, or has it been beaten?
Yeah, I think he still holds it.
Still holds it. Football's not just about scoring, it's about winning. Again, that's obviously important in terms of strikers wanting to be the top scorer, which is great, but ultimately you want to win games of football. Thierry Henry, it's not about me, it's about how I can help my team to achieve more. And I do that by scoring goals, which is a little bit of a different take on Alan Shearer's comment. Attackers are out there ultimately to score goals. Defenders get clean sheets, goalkeepers get, joy out of clean sheets and making big saves, but you can't win games of football. You can draw games of football, but you can't win games of football unless you score goals. And it's, as I was fascinated by Ronnie McFall, and I've discussed this with Alfie Stewart so many times. McFall would have took his budget, took about 25-30% of his budget and threw it at 2 strikers. Literally, just two top strikers. Why? Because you don't win anything unless you get boys that score goals. So, Nathaniel, I'll let you start with that, and then Andy, obviously, as a coach of a team, I'll let you comment on that. So, Nathaniel, obviously, as a striker, you're going to concur with that, but What made you be a striker? Nathaniel's a good place to start. Had you play other positions, or what attracted you to being an out-and-out goal scorer?
It's a difficult question. I think my dad was centre forward. I think that's probably just what happened to start. I think the enjoyment of scoring a goal. I think the scoring a goal in a game, regardless of what level it is always a good feeling. Obviously, it's as you said. Anyone who knows me, I can't stand losing games. Can't stand it, and I'm very critical of myself, and sometimes I'm critical of other people. But that's again competitiveness coming out. So if I score a goal and that happened to win 1-0, if I score a couple of goals or set up a couple of goals, then that's obviously my job done. That's what it is. Like as a centre forward, you talked about obviously the other elements and the other elements you have to be as a centre forward, but scoring goals is your job. That's the height of it. If you score goals, you win games. You don't win games if you don't score goals. And if nobody scores, then it's only going to end up a max of a draw anyway. So that's why centre forward is so important. And that's why you see likes of most recently, probably the most prolific in the Premier League, like Sergio Aguero. The amount of goals he scored every year, like Cristiano Ronaldo's still banging in goals at his age, and that's down to fitness. That's down to how he's kept his body. But not many people can compare to Cristiano Ronaldo either because he's a machine, really. But as a centre forward, it's no better feeling than scoring a goal. What do you say?
What about Morales?
Yes, Morales as well. You got to get the unorthodox centre forward. Still scores goals though. That's all that matters.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'll let the midfielders just make a quick comment. They just confine yourselves to about 20 seconds on this one. So, obviously, what's the difference for you as midfielders, or Andy maybe playing that number 10 role? How much difference does it make having someone up top? Like when Nathaniel's on fire as he was last season, I mean, he was literally unplayable at times. But that must be really nice for midfielders to know that if you get the service to the striker, he's going to score goals. How different does that make your performance on a Saturday?
Yeah, well, basically that's what I'd rely on is playing off the front man. And Nathaniel does that very well. He holds the ball up very well and links me and other midfielders and brings us into the game. And for him he can either go in behind or he can come short. And it's just a totally different option to have. It's a lot better than someone who just stands up front and does nothing all day. Nathaniel run the channel and he'll come short and link us into the game. And whenever he gets us involved, like we can bring other players into the game too. And then allow Nathaniel to spin and go into the box after that.
Brilliant. Marcus or Scott, want to have a quick comment on that?
Aye, well, as I said earlier before, I always like turning. My favourite pass was always turning the defence, and I always knew Nathaniel, his pace and the strength of him, he'd turn a bad ball into a good ball kind of thing. You just clip it into the corners at times, and he's away like a greyhound. So I always enjoyed playing with Nathaniel, to be honest with you. And if you have time to look up and pass you, there be Hoey or, well, it was Yaya as well, in the hole and played off, and then boys on their day, like they're serious, like.
Yeah. Scott?
No, I think the boys have covered it pretty much there.
Yeah, okay.
DJ, can I just jump in then as well?
100%, yeah.
Coming off that, for all of you, I suppose for the young players growing up, and it's something that we spoke about every week in terms of the position specific, is the communication and that relationships. Because I know at these ages, kids just think it's, they're playing their position and that's all they have to do. But there's so much more when we get up to your level, and it's learning early, I suppose, is communication and relationships. So, how important for you boys is it to have a relationship with your striker, to have a relationship with your wingers, with your 10, to know where you're going to be, how you play. As Marcus says, he knows if he could have clipped the ball in that Nathaniel was going after it. So kids today sort of don't really have those relationship skills or know. So how important for you is it to build those? And, does it make your game a lot easier?
I think, listen, there's no point playing football if you can't talk. And I don't know what it's like for younger boys now, but you learn the hard way. The higher you get age group wise, if you don't talk on the pitch, your matches are going to be so much harder. You can't have a quiet team. It just makes it so much more difficult for everyone. You don't have that problem with Nathaniel, that's for sure. But, I think communication's definitely. I don't think it's not that it's not focused enough, but I think it's a massive, massive, massive thing. And having too many boys too quiet in your team is just going to affect your match and how you perform.
Yep.
Aye, big time. I second that. You need to be talking on the pitch, all over the pitch. And you mentioned relationships on the pitch. As I said, like Ferris, you'd always clip into the channel. You know, we always knew Ferry was inside, or Scott, or Hoey, or Yaya. Be relationships that you know where people, you start to learn, you pick up where they'll be. Peter Campbell was another one when he played in the left wing. At times you knew he was out there. You just, you know, but you learn that as you get older and playing more regularly with the same players.
The lads basically covered it all there, but for example, for the young players, like when they're on the pitch, just think about it. Like if you're talking to your teammate when you're passing them the ball, say man on, he doesn't even have to look around to know there's a man there. He's going to know where you're straight, so he'll know where to play the ball next. So it makes his job easier too. So it does.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you finish, Gary, with some of the questions come in there. I know Sam had one there, which is quite an interesting one, but I'm going to just wrap this session up, and maybe Andy can come in behind me just with an observation. But when we talk about communication, I think that sometimes goes hand in hand with a will to win on a football pitch. And what strikes me there, just when you ask that question, you look at the 4 players we've won, you know, if you were to analyse them as characters, I mean, when they're on a football pitch, I mean, they all have a will to win. And young players, one thing they need to learn about as they get older and into men's football is you're going to have aggression on the pitch. You know, sometimes young players say it's all nicey and coaching. But when you hit men's football, when results matter, you know, and you make the same mistake twice in a row, expect to be balled out by your teammates. And it's not that they're getting at you, it's just they want to win. And they're not going to stand for sloppiness. They're not going to stand for players not on their toes. So when you hear Nathaniel having a go at Marcus or a go at Scott on a pitch, it's not they're falling out. There's just a desire to win. There's a desire to be successful. And that comes out in the communication. You know, so Andy, as a coach and obviously as a player, you were probably on that edge as well. That you know,
just a wee bit.
Just a wee bit. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice in that, but you know what I mean? You played the game on the edge and saw plenty of red cards in your career, but a lot of those were out of frustration of the way the game was going. So how important for younger players coming up, understanding, you know, that it's a competitive game, first team football, and you have to be able to take the aggression.
Usually, I think that's the one thing we probably have to, where I say the gaffer and the coaching staff have to take our hat off to you guys, is that, you know, we have had numerous, I think last year we had 7 guys that came up and played first team football. I think the year before, I think we had 9. You know, so from that, and these guys are stepping up, and these guys are holding their places. They're staying in the squad. Unfortunately, yes, some of them moved on, but you know, it is that whatever you guys are doing, the under 20 level is working, because these guys are coming able to hang in and able to take the you know, the bluntness of some of the chats that we have in the changing rooms. You know, as I say, I think it's a vital part of football, of professional football, is that being able to say your piece in an articulate way. And I think that, yes, sometimes it doesn't always happen like that. But I think it's, you know, and again, this is where the team philosophy comes into it that we spoke about previously, about it's not just the 1 to 11, you know, it's a team in general. It's the subs that have to come on and do that role exactly the same, or to a higher standard that was done previously for the first 50 or 60 minutes of that game, or the first 20 minutes, whatever it may be. So no, listen, it's a communication in the game now is vitally important. And you can now hear with obviously what's happened with the empty stadiums. You know, if you listen to the actual players, it's a constant stream of talking and communication between one another of what to do and what not to do. You know, so I think for me, as being a young guy, especially watching streaming on TV, you can now hone in and listen to what actually communication can say between these players. Because I think at the moment, as I think you alluded to earlier, Dave, was about the emphasis on over-coaching kids at the moment. It's all about pass, pass, pass. And I think that's fantastic, but we have to get to the stage where we want to make them into winners. You know, and as I say, Loughgall's never going to move on to the next standard if we're bringing through guys that aren't ready for the men's game. And I think that's a credit to the youth on how they've brought through their players and that they actually learned that man's game at 16, 17, 18. I think I went and watched one of the games, I think it was under 18, and I think there was 4 that had played under 15 football that year that played for the under 18s. You know, and this is what we have to do, is to push guys on that are, get them ready for the men's game. The sooner the better. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we definitely, when I came in 3 years ago, you know, Dean asked me, and that was one of the big things that I tried to change, was that mentality of listen, you got to give Alfie Stewart and Dara Peden a lot of credit for that as well for the last 2 years. And we try and make the dressing room for the 20s almost the same environment as the first team. You know, and obviously it's never going to be quite that same intensity. But what we want the players to have the attitude of, you know, if you are been sloppy, you're going to be called out on it. It's not 15, 16, we just get a wee chat in the corner. You're going to be called out on it. You're going to be set high standards. You're going to be demands placed on you. Because if you can't cope with that at 20s level, then darn sure you won't cope with it at the first team level, you know. So listen, we're just about on time, Gary. I'll let you wrap up any questions you have, and then I'll announce next week, and then we're done.
Yeah. So James McGrath, I think you have a very good question. If you want to pop yourself off mute and ask your Nathaniel, it'll be aimed at, I would imagine.
As a striker, do you need a lot of strength to get past the defenders?
Personally, yes, because I don't have the technical ability to dribble past someone. Look, there's different types of strikers out there. If you look at the likes of Roberto Firmino, I'm a United supporter, so I'm not going to big him up. And then you look at the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, 2 completely different players, both considered centre forwards at this present moment in time. Like, my game is pace, my game is strength, and I work on that because I wouldn't be the most technical player in the world. I think in the likes of our league, you do need to be physical. You can't be bullied off the ball easy. But if you're not the biggest in the world, you're going to need to be a bit better technically. So it sort of depends on what sort of type of body that you would have, and you need to make a decision on sort of where you be. But core strength's a big thing. Core strength keeps you holding the ball up, and obviously pace and stuff. So making sure that you keep your legs and stuff strengthened will obviously make sure that you can even run in behind. But it depends. It really does depend. But personally, I would work on pace and strength because of my lack thereof of technical ability, really.
Yep, very good. And then Lennox, do you want to jump in? Your question?
What's that? How do you get the confidence to defend against bigger players than you?
Suppose that Marcus and Scott, especially in the middle of the park there, where you're having battles every week.
It's not me, it's Dallas. I can't defend.
Well, I quite like the physical side of it, as I said. My mentality is the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So just trying to stop getting, be more craftier. And if you can't outdo him, make sure he doesn't outdo you, if you know what I mean. You just give him a hard time, really hard time. Never leave his side, and he'll know that you're there, basically. So that's the advice I give.
But how would you get your confidence in, Marcus, in a game like that? Would it be a good tackle? Would that be?
Well, I always like to get on the ball as early as I can. Straight away, I always like to get on it. Because the more touches in the game you get, the better you'll feel during the game. And then take it from there, play yourself into the game. And basically that's it. As quick as you can get on the ball and start playing. Keep everything simple, 5-10 yard passes. And then after that, you'll feel good in the game.
Another thing there, just on that, obviously I don't win too many headers as the players are a lot bigger than me, as I'm one of the smaller players in the pitch. But the thing I'd look for is picking up the second ball. So when you're not winning the first initial header, is trying to pick up bits and pieces in around it. So that's the advice I'd give there. Yeah.
I think anything else before we go to the vice chairman?
No, I think that's it, DJ, at the minute.
So I'll go to the vice chairman just to conclude, and then we'll announce next week what's happening next week. So James, are you available, please, and can join us on camera and unmuted?
Yeah. Look, I'd just like to thank Gary and DJ again for putting the likes of these things on. This is week 5 here now, and as I say, starting off, it was with Dino and Fergie, and then, as I say, Pat and Alfie. And week 3, I think Kyle in the nutrition, and week 4, obviously the senior team with the defenders and keepers, and it brings us up to the day with the midfielders and strikers. But we've talked about a lot of things over the weeks, and I think it's been very, very beneficial just for everybody as a club as a whole. I think the parents and the kids in the youth setup who've been watching these over the number of weeks, I know I have taken a lot out of it, and from all the meetings, and I think all the kids will have taken plenty from it. And I suppose what sums it up, sometimes we say we've got the facilities which we have now. 4 or 5 years ago, the youth was training here, there, and everywhere. And as I say, I think every meeting we've had, we've spoke about how good the facilities are, from Dean and the senior team right down through. So, but one thing that's said maybe a lot of times at Legal is, if you could lift Legal and set it somewhere else, as in a bigger catchment area where you would get more support, more of this, more of that. And it's, in my opinion, if I had a choice to lift Legal and set it anywhere, I would just set it back down exactly where it is, because one of the things we haven't spoke about here is the people in the club so much. But we've got the facilities now, but none of that matters without the coaches that we have, right up from Dino and the senior team to the committees, right down through till, I suppose, if you want to start off with people coming in at the youth from 5-6 years of age, with Ernie Smith right up through to the senior club. That's the path that there is here now. And one of the most pleasing things probably for me over all these, which probably wasn't expecting to hear as much of, was the togetherness and the commitment of the senior guys, even the guys on the night, the way they speak about the quality that's coming up through the youth. It's very pleasing to hear that, because there has been a lot of work over the number of years, and right up through what you've done yourself, DJ, there with the Gary, with the 18s, 20s, and who everybody else, Dara, whoever's involved. But it shows that the link, join Legal at 5 years of age. You don't have to leave to go to any of these other clubs. Everything's there for you. The quality of coaching, the people in the club care about the kids. It's plain to be seen. And the pathway is there right up through to the senior team, where Dino was in the first meeting had said about, as I say, he's very much on for giving the guys a chance, and has proven that. So look, that's me summing up what I've taken out of this. And I think, as I say, as parents from who is guys in the youth, as I say, sometimes you can get your head turned with all our clubs coming here and saying this and saying that, but after these meetings, I think it's clearly spelt that you need to go nowhere else. You'll get your chances at Legal, and you'll get your chances, and if you take them, you'll move on to bigger and better things if you're good enough for it. But just thanks to, as I say, Gary and yourself and Davey there for obviously setting these up, and I think they've been going very well so far. So that's really it for me. So thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Can I just come in there? I'll second that, by the way, because I've been in Gloucester 7 years. And when I first came here, Fergie will tell you, Fergie's there longer. Gloucester was, what I seen was this night and day between 7 years ago to now. Facilities, the setup now is incredible, unbelievable. In fact, between the coaches, the 4G, everything, the way it's run now is so professional. See, back 7, 6, 5 years ago even, it was a night and day, as I say. And just to touch on a wee thing, see any of the young kids listening in, or anybody at all that ever wants to contact any of us players anywhere, whether it's Facebook or anything. Everybody knows their names. Around the club, if you want mobile numbers, anything at all, just to pick up the phone, contact us and anything, talk about anything you want, just to get things off your chest or talk about football or anything like that. You're more than welcome. I know my phone's always here, and contact me anytime.
I'll second that.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Gary, you want to announce next week's?
Yeah, well, next week is the last of this session. We're actually in talks of maybe giving it a few weeks break and then going into something different. But so next week is going to be the last of what we've been doing. And I think it's probably going to be a very good one for the youth team players, especially because we're going to be focusing on the core of the players that Andy Smith has been talking about, that Dean Smith's been talking about. The players who have made that jump from 20s to first team football. So we're going to give them the platform to give you every opportunity to ask them how they feel, what the mentality's been, what the difference has been. I think people spoke about it the other week, and the tempo was huge in terms of going from 20s to first team, and what first team players expect from you as a 18-year-old, as a 17-year-old. So all that's going to be on next week, which is really, really, really important. And it's a good one to finish on because these kids have been there, they've done it, and they're living it at the moment. And as I say, they're probably in the same sort of uncertain times, and they don't know how COVID's going to affect them as players. But, I would say mentally it's probably going to bring them out stronger. So next week will be a really, really good one to get involved. One player is playing regularly in the first team, and the rest of the boys have broken the first team squad. So pick their brains and enjoy it.
Yeah, so we're looking at a common. I don't know exactly, we don't know necessarily bring on 7, 8, but it'll probably be somewhere along the lines of some from this group: Johnny Ure, Luke Cartwright, John Scott, Scott McCann, Hutchie. I've missed them there. Kieran Kelly. Have I missed anybody out of that wee group? Gary, have I?
Ben Neal as
well.
We're
going to bring Ben down. Yeah, we're going to bring Ben down as a regular first team player now. So we're going to have some of those ones on, and it'll be really good to listen to their stories. So, listen, guys, I know that the supporters club have got a quiz on here. I want to try and let people get onto that. So, can I thank each of the guests for tonight? Thanks very much for coming on. Really appreciate that, taking time up. Scott can go back and finish off his cold food now. That he had to leave to one side. And thanks to the vice chairman for taking the time to be on here and the support of the senior committee, particularly for these events. So listen, with that, we'll knock it on the head and wish everyone all the best. And you can hang about a few minutes and chat if you want, but we're going to obviously stop the recording now. And see you all next week, 7 p.m. Have a good one.
Cheers, lads.
Thank
you. Cheers,
lads. Thank you.
Thanks, David.